Hey guys, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. My name is Crown, and today I'm going to read you some very interesting stories that I hope that you're gonna love. And now, without further ado, let's go!
I'm still chuckling about what happened a couple of months ago. It was just one of those days, you know? I was hungry, craving some good pizza, and decided to order from this chain place nearby. Now, I'm not usually one to pat myself on the back, but I've got to say, ordering ahead was a stroke of genius. When I pulled up to the pizza joint, the place was packed. Cars everywhere, people milling about. It was like the whole town had decided to have pizza that night. As I circled the parking lot, my eyes scanned for an empty spot. It was like finding a needle in a haystack, I tell you. Just when I was about to give up hope, I spotted it. A single, empty space right by the entrance. Perfect, right? Well, not quite. As I got closer, I noticed something odd. There were these teenagers, probably around 16 or 17, just sitting there in a parking spot. Not in a car, mind you, but literally sitting on the ground, taking up the whole space. I couldn't believe my eyes. I thought to myself, surely they will move when they see me coming. So I drove up slowly, giving them plenty of time to get up and out of the way. But nope, they just sat there staring at me like I was the one doing something wrong. I inched forward, thinking maybe they just needed a little more encouragement. Still nothing. These kids were as stubborn as mules, I tell you. At this point, I was getting pretty annoyed. I mean, come on, who sits in a parking spot? There were two perfectly good patios at the pizza place where they could hang out. But no, they had to choose the one empty parking spot in the whole lot. Now, I'm not proud of what I did next, but I'm not exactly ashamed either. I decided to pull into the spot anyway, moving as slowly as a snail to make sure I didn't hit any of them. It was like a weird game of chicken, only with my car and these kids' stubbornness. As I finally parked and got out of my car, those teenagers gave me the dirtiest looks you can imagine. If looks could kill, I'd have been 6 feet under. But they still didn't move. They just sat there right in front of my car like some kind of human roadblock. And that's when I remembered something about my car. Its horn is something else. And that's when I remembered something about my car. Its horn is something else, let me tell you. It's not just loud, it's ear-piercingly shrill. The kind of sound that makes you want to cover your ears and run for the hills. And if you're right in front of the car when it goes off, well, let's just say it's not a pleasant experience. As I walked towards the pizza place, a plan started forming in my head. It was petty, sure, but at that moment, it felt like justice. I waited until I was just about to enter the restaurant before I put my plan into action. I turned around facing my car and did what any reasonable car owner would do. I locked my car. And you know what happens when you lock a car, right? The horn beeps. The sound cut through the air like a knife. I saw those teenagers jump about a foot in the air. Their face is a mix of surprise and annoyance, but I wasn't done yet. I pressed the lock button again, sending another shrill beep their way. As I walked into the pizza place, I couldn't help but smirk a little. I know it wasn't very mature of me, but sometimes you've got to fight fire with fire, right? I went inside, gave my name for the order, and waited for my pizza. The whole time I was half expecting those kids to come storming in, demanding to speak to me or something. But they didn't. When I finally got my pizza and headed back out to my car, guess what? Those teenagers were nowhere to be seen. Parking spot was clear, safe for my car. I couldn't help but feel a little victorious as I got in and drove away. Now, I know what you're thinking, that's it? That's your big revenge story? And you're right, it's not exactly the stuff of legends, but sometimes it's the little things that bring the most satisfaction. As I drove home, enjoying the smell of fresh pizza wafting through my car, I couldn't help but replay the scene in my mind. Those kids' faces when the horn went off. Priceless. I know I shouldn't have found it so funny, but I did. My husband and I bought our dream house a few years ago. It had everything we wanted, including a beautiful pool in a backyard. We were excited about our new home and looked forward to enjoy quiet summers by the pool. At first, everything seemed normal. We met our neighbors and exchanged pleasantries. but we didn't become close friends with any of them. That was fine by us. We're not the super social type anyway. The family next door seemed nice enough. They had 4 kids, twin daughters in college, a high school son, and a little girl around 7 or 8 years old. Usually, we open our pool in early May and keep it open until late October. This year was different though. May was unusually cool and rainy. And then June hit us with scorching heat. I'm on medication that makes it hard for me to be in the sun for long, and we've been busy helping family members with health issues. So we hadn't gotten around to opening the pool yet. During June, a little girl next door would occasionally see us outside and ask when we were opening the pool. At first, we'd say maybe later, but yesterday when she asked again, I told her we probably weren't going to open it this year. And to my surprise, she burst into tears. I was confused. We'd never invited any neighbors to use our pool, so why was she so upset? Later that day, I was talking to our neighbor on the left side, and what he told me left me speechless. Hey, I noticed you haven't opened your pool yet. Is everything okay? Yeah, we're just really busy this year and might not open it at all. Oh, that's too bad. What about the 4th of July party? What 4th of July party? You know, the one your right side neighbors have every year when you're away at the lake house. Excuse me? What are you talking about? Oh, I thought you knew. The family next door has been having a small gathering at your pool every 4th of July when you're not home. They always clean up well afterward. I assumed you gave them permission. I was stunned. We had never given anyone permission to use our pool, especially when we weren't home. Sure, we told the neighbors they could retrieve any toys that ended up in our yard, and my husband had shown them how to open the gate latch for that purpose. But using our pool? That was a whole different story. I went inside and told my husband what I'd just learned. He was as shocked as I was. Are you serious? They've been using our pool without asking? Apparently so. Every 4th of July when we're at the lake house. Well, that explains why the little girl was so upset when you said we might not open the pool this year. I can't believe they'd do this. It's such a violation of our privacy and property. You know what this means, right? What? We need to upgrade our security system. I couldn't help but laugh. Leave it to my gadget-loving husband to find a silver lining in this situation. He says, I'm thinking we should install more cameras around the exterior, especially covering the gate and pool area. We can upgrade the gate latch to something we can control remotely for the pool service and yard guys. I tell him that actually sounds like a good idea. Do you know someone who can do that? Yeah, remember my buddy who does home automation? He can hook us up. So that's what we did. We had several new cameras installed around our property focusing on a pool area and a gate. The new latch system was pretty cool too. We could grant access remotely when needed. As the 4th of July approached, we wondered if our neighbors would say anything. They didn't. The little girl next door stopped asking about the pool, but we could feel the tension in the air whenever we saw them. On the morning of July 4th, we were sitting on our back porch, enjoying our coffee, when we heard voices coming from next door. Little girl says, Daddy, can we go swimming today? Sure, sweetie. Let me just check if the coast is clear. We watched as the dad peeked over the fence, his eyes widening when he saw us sitting there, and he quickly ducked back down. Uh-oh, looks like they are home this year. But you said we always have our party in our pool. Shh, not so loud. At this point, my husband and I exchanged glances. Should we confront them? We decided to wait and see what would happen next. A few minutes later, we heard a knock at our front door. It was a neighbor dad, looking sheepish. Hey, I was just wondering if you were planning to open your pool this year. No, we're not. Is there a particular reason you're asking? Well, it's just that, the kids were hoping to swim today. My husband couldn't hold back anymore. You mean like you've been doing every 4th of July when we're not home? The color drained from our neighbor's face. How did you... We know you've been using our pool without permission for years. Did you really think we wouldn't find out? Look, I can explain. Explain what? How you've been trespassing on our property and using our pool without asking? We always cleaned up afterward, and we made sure nothing was damaged. That's not the point. You never asked for permission. You just assumed it was okay to use our property when we weren't home. I'm sorry, we should have asked. It's just that the kids love swimming and we can't afford a pool of our own. Well, that doesn't give you the right to use ours without asking. What if someone had gotten hurt? Did you ever think about the liability issues? The neighbor dad hung his head in shame. You're right. We were completely out of line. It won't happen again, I promise. Make sure it doesn't. Just so you know, we've installed security cameras around the property, so we will know if anyone tries to use a pool without our permission again. The neighbor dad nodded and slunk away, thoroughly embarrassed. We watched as he went back to his house, where his family was waiting expectantly. We couldn't hear what he said to them, but we saw the disappointed looks on their faces. Over the next few weeks, things were awkward with our right-side neighbors. They avoided eye contact when we saw them outside, and a little girl stopped waving to us. But we stood firm in our decision. It was our property, and we had the right to decide who used it and when. As the summer went on, we started to feel a little bad for the kids next door. They looked so miserable in the heat with no pool to cool off in. After much discussion, my husband and I came to a decision. One evening in late July, we invited the neighbors over for a barbecue. They seemed surprised but accepted the invitation. When they arrived, there was an awkward silence at first, but we all made an effort to move past it. I say, look, what happened wasn't okay. We understand that everyone makes mistakes. My husband adds, we've been thinking, and we'd like to propose something. If you're willing to contribute to the pool maintenance costs, we'd be open to letting your family use a pool occasionally. But when we're home and with our permission. The neighbors looked shocked and grateful. Really? That's incredibly generous of you. We'd be happy to chip in for maintenance. And we promise to always ask permission first and respect your property. From that day on, our relationship with the neighbors improved. They were always respectful of our property and our rules. The kids got to enjoy the pool a few times that summer, and we actually enjoyed having them over. The following 4th of July, we decided to host a neighborhood barbecue. As I watched the kids splashing in the pool and the adults chatting around the grill, I couldn't help but smile. It had been a rocky road, but in the end, we'd found a solution that worked for everyone. The entitled behavior of our neighbors had initially left a bad taste in our mouth, but their willingness to admit their mistake and make amends had turned the situation around. It just goes to show that sometimes a little communication and compromise can go a long way in resolving conflicts and building community. As for our security cameras, well, we kept them. After all, you never know when they might come in handy again. Let's start by saying that I've had a pretty messed up life thanks to my mom. She's always been a nightmare, not just to me but to everyone around her. My grandparents suffered the most, I think. Growing up, I watched my mom treat her parents like garbage. She'd yell at them, demand money, and make their lives miserable. It got so bad that I decided to cut her out of my life as soon as I could. Best decision I ever made. A few years back, my grandmother passed away. It was hard on all of us, especially my grandfather. He held on for a couple more years before joining her. I was heartbroken, but there was a silver lining. My grandfather left everything to me in his will, his beautiful house and all his possessions. I guess he knew what would happen if he left it to my mom. My husband and I decided to move into the house with our 2 kids. It was perfect for us and we were so grateful, but of course, my mom couldn't let us be happy. At first, it was just angry phone calls and text messages. She'd leave voicemails screaming about how the house should be hers. This is my house. My parents' house. You have no right to get it. Get out now, or I'll make you regret it. We ignored her. What else could we do? We had the legal right to be there, and we weren't about to let her bully us out of our home. This went on for weeks, then months. We thought she'd eventually give up. But one night, everything changed. I was sound asleep when I felt my husband shaking me awake. At first, I was confused. But then I saw her. My mother was standing at the foot of our bed, pointing a gun right at us. My blood ran cold. Get the hell out of my house right now, or I'll shoot you both dead. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. Was this really happening? "Mom, what the hell are you doing? I told you this was my house. Now get out before I pull this trigger." My husband tried to calm her down, speaking in a low, steady voice. "Please, put the gun down. We can talk about this." "There is nothing to talk about. This is my house, and you're leaving now." My husband and I slowly got out of bed, our hands raised. He whispered to me to get the kids. We walked carefully to their rooms, woke them up, and headed for the front door. My mom followed us the whole way, gun still aimed at our backs. As soon as we were outside, my husband handed me his phone. "Call 911, now." I nodded, my hands shaking as I dialed. When I turned to ask my husband what we should do next, he was gone. I panicked, realizing he must have gone back inside. While I was on the phone with the emergency operator, our next-door neighbor came out to see what was going on. I quickly explained the situation and asked her to watch the kids. And that's when I heard that. A gunshot from inside the house. My heart stopped. Oh God, no! I ran back inside, not thinking about my own safety. When I got to our bedroom, I saw my husband holding a gun and my mother on the floor, clutching her bleeding arm. "Are you okay?" I had to do it. She was going to shoot me." "What happened?" I came back to try and talk her down, but when she saw me and aimed a gun at me, I had no choice. I was in shock. This couldn't be real, but it was. The police arrived minutes later, followed by an ambulance. They took my mother away for medical treatment while we gave our statements. The officers checked our documents, confirming that we were the rightful owners of the house and that my husband had acted in self-defense. The next few weeks were a blur of police interviews, lawyer meetings, and court appearances. My mother was charged with multiple serious crimes: home invasion, attempted murder, illegal possession of a firearm. The list went on. During the trial, I had to face her for the first time in years. She looked older, angrier, but somehow smaller than I remembered. As I gave my testimony, she glared at me with such hatred that it made my skin crawl. I said, "She's always been like this, angry, entitled, thinking the whole world owes her everything. But I never thought she'd go this far." Prosecutor says, "And you had no contact with your mother prior to this incident?" "No, I cut ties with her years ago, for my own mental health and the safety of my own family." "Can you tell us about the night of the incident?" I recounted that terrifying night, my voice shaking at times. My husband squeezed my hand, giving me threats. I thought she was going to kill us. I've never been so scared in my life. The defense tried to paint my mother as a grieving daughter, pushed to extremes by the loss of her childhood home. But the evidence was overwhelming. In the end, the jury found her guilty on all charges. As a judge read out her sentence, I felt a mix of relief and sadness. My mother would be in prison for a long time. Part of me was glad she couldn't hurt us anymore, but another part mourning for the mother I never really had. After the trial, life slowly returned to normal. We increased security at the house, adding cameras and a better alarm system. The kids had some trouble sleeping for a while, but with time and therapy, they are doing much better now. My husband and I have grown closer through all of this. We appreciate each other and our life together more than ever. We've made the house into a real home filled with love and laughter, everything my grandparents would have wanted. Sometimes I think about my mother alone in prison. I wonder if she ever regrets what she did, if she ever thinks about the family she lost because of her actions. But then I remember that night, the cold look in her eyes as she pointed that gun at us. And I know we made the right choice in keeping her out of our lives. Life has a funny way of pushing you to your limits. This story takes place over 30 years ago when I was a senior in high school. I was 18 at the time, just trying to make it through my final year and graduate. Now, there was this class called Civics that everyone had to take to graduate. No big deal, right? Wrong. The teacher, Mr. Kampala, was something else entirely. On the first day of class, he's taking attendance, and when he gets to my name, he looks up with this weird glint in his eye. "Are you related to Sarah?" "Yes, she's my older sister." He shakes his head. "Bad citizen. I'll have to watch you." "I don't know, I thought he was joking. I mean, who says that to a student they've just met?" But nope, he was dead serious. Turns out, bad citizen was his favorite thing to call anyone who did something he didn't like in his class. I had no idea what my sister had done to get on his bad side, but whatever it was, Mr. Kumbala was determined to make me pay for it. I wasn't even a troublemaker, I was just a regular kid trying to get through high school. The next day, I'm sitting in class minding my own business when out of nowhere, "Yo, stop talking." I look around confused, no one was talking. The whole class was silent. "I'm sorry, Mr. Kumbala, but I wasn't talking." "Don't lie to me, you're just like your sister. Go to the office." Before I could even defend myself, he was writing up a suspension referral for talking in class without actually speaking. It was ridiculous. Luckily, when I got to the office, the administrators didn't seem too surprised. Apparently, Mr. Kumbala had a bit of reputation for this kind of thing. They didn't suspend me, but they did give me a warning, as if I'd done anything wrong. This became a pattern throughout the semester. Mr. Kumbala would accuse me of things I didn't do, send me to the office for no reason, and generally make my life miserable. But the worst part was how he graded my work. I'd turn in a test, knowing I'd answered every question correctly, only to get it back with a C or D. When I tried to argue my case, he'd just shake his head and mutter "bad citizen" under his breath. By the end of the semester, I knew I'd earned an A in the class. I'd worked my butt off, double and triple checking every assignment. But when the final grades came out, there was it, a big fat C. Now, there was something odd about Mr. Kumbala that everyone knew. Every day after school, he'd stay in his classroom until exactly 5 p.m. The door would be closed and no one knew what he did in there. It's not like he was preparing amazing lessons. His idea of teaching was having us read the textbook out loud to each other. As the last day of school rolled around, I knew I had to do something. I couldn't let him get away with treating me unfairly all day. So I came up with a plan. When the final bell rang, everyone rushed out of school, eager to start their summer. Everyone except Mr. Kumbala and me, that is. I waited until I was sure Mr. Kumbala was in his classroom with the door closed. Then I snuck up to his door, making sure to stand with my feet wider than the door frame. I didn't want him to see my shadow and get suspicious. With shaking hands, I pulled out a tube of fast-drying glue from my backpack. Slowly, carefully, I squeezed the entire tube into the gap between the door and the frame. The glue oozed out, filling every crevice. My heart was pounding so hard I was sure Mr. Kumbala would hear it through the door, but there was no sound from inside the classroom. I finished emptying the tube, then quickly and quietly made my way out of the school. I knew Mr. Kumbala wouldn't try to leave until 5 p.m., which gave the glue over 2 hours to sit. More than enough time for it to harden completely. I went home that day feeling a mix of emotions. Part of me felt guilty for what I'd done, but another part felt a sense of satisfaction. Mr. Kumbala had made my life hell for an entire semester, and now he was going to get a taste of his own medicine. The next day I heard through the grapevine what had happened. Apparently, when Mr. Kumbala tried to leave his classroom at 5 p.m., he found the door wouldn't budge. He tried pushing, pulling, even kicking the door, but it wouldn't open. Eventually, he had to call the classroom phone to call for help. The school janitor came, but even he couldn't get the door open. In the end, they had to call the fire department to come and free Mr. Kumbala from his classroom. I can only imagine the look on his face when he realized what had happened. I'm sure he had a pretty good idea who the bad citizen was behind this prank, but he couldn't prove anything. Looking back now, as a 50-year-old man, I'm not proud of what I did. It was petty and could have been dangerous, but at the time it felt like the only way to get back at a teacher who had treated me unfairly all year. I learned a lot from that experience, though not the kind of lessons Mr. Kumbala was supposed to be teaching in civics class. I learned that sometimes people in positions of authority abuse their power. I learned that it's important to stand up for yourself, but also that revenge isn't always the answer. Most importantly, I learned that our actions have consequences, both for others and for ourselves. The guilt I felt after pulling that prank stayed with me for a long time. It made me think twice before acting out of anger or frustration in the future. As for me, well, I went on to college and built a life for myself. I became a teacher, believe it or not. Every day in my classroom I remember Mr. Kambala and tried to be the kind teacher he wasn't. Fair, understanding, and always willing to listen to my students. It was supposed to be a good day. I mean, getting a new phone is always exciting, right? Little did I know that this new phone and number would turn my life into a bizarre teen drama. It all started in 2012. I had just gotten my new phone, all shiny and full of promise, and for about a day everything was great. I was downloading apps, setting up my contacts, and enjoying that new phone smell. But then things took a weird turn. The first text came in late at night. It read, "Hey sexy, miss me? Can't wait to see you at practice tomorrow." I blinked at my screen, confused. I didn't play any sports, and I certainly wasn't expecting any flirty texts. I replied, "Sorry, I think you have the wrong number." "Very funny, Jake. See you tomorrow." I shrugged it off, thinking it was just a one-time mix-up, but oh boy was I wrong. The next day my phone started blowing up. Texts, calls, voicemails, you name it. It didn't take long to figure out what was going on. Apparently my new number used to belong to some high school hockey player named Jake. And this Jake guy, well, he was quite the ladies' man. At first it was just a few spicy texts here and there, and I kept replying that they had the wrong number, but these people were persistent. Then came the butts dials from Jake's mom. Yes, you heard that right. His mom. It seemed like Jake had gotten rid of his old number, my new number, but forgot to tell literally everyone in his life. But that wasn't even the worst part. Oh no, it got so much worse. I started getting texts from girls, lots of girls. And when I say girls, I mean teenagers ranging from 14 to 18 years old. They were all texting daily, some saying some pretty explicit stuff that made me want to bleach my eyes. And let me tell you, they would not take no for an answer. "I'm sorry, but this isn't Jake. You had the wrong number." "Stop playing, Jake. You know you want me." "No, seriously, I am not Jake. This is a new number." "Oh my god, Jake. You're so funny. Can't wait to see you at the game tonight." It was like talking to a brick wall. A hormonal teenage brick wall. After a few days of this, I realized what was happening. This Jake kid was still giving out his old number, my number, to girls at his school. And apparently all these girls knew exactly who he was and were very enthusiastic about getting his number. It seemed like he was playing what must have been dozens of girls over a very short period. I was getting real tired of this. Every day my phone would ding with new messages from lovesick teenagers. I tried blocking numbers, but new ones kept popping up. It was like playing whack-a-mole with hormone-fueled text messages. One particularly frustrating day, I got texts from two completely new girls. Numbers I hadn't seen before, but they were definitely talking like Jake had them all worked up for who knows what. "Hey Jake, can't believe you finally gave me your number. I've been crushing on you forever." The other one says, "Jake, oh my god, is this really your number? I'm so excited." That was it, I'd had enough. This Jake guy was ruining my life and he didn't even know it. Or maybe he did and he just didn't care. Either way, I decided it was time for a little payback. So I made a decision. A pity, probably ill-advised decision. But hey, I was at my wit's end. "Hey girls, glad you texted. Why don't you come over tonight?" "Really? Oh my god, yes," the other one says. "I'd love to. What time?" "Be at my place at 6 p.m. Can't wait to see you both." "Both? What do you mean both?" "Oh, didn't I mention? I invited both of you over. Hope that's not a problem." There was a long pause after that. I could almost feel the confusion and anger brewing on the end of those text messages. "What the hell, Jake? Are you playing games?" "Yeah, I thought I was special. How could you invite someone else?" Now, ladies, there is plenty of Jake to go around. See you at 6. I didn't give them an address. I didn't need to. They both seemed to know where Jake lived already. I almost felt bad for what I was doing, but then I remembered the weeks of harassment I endured because of this guy. 6 p.m. came and went. I didn't hear anything for a while. Then around 7:30 my phone exploded with messages. "You jerk! I can't believe you did this. I never want to see you again, Jake. You're the worst." Then various other girls texted me, "What did you do to Sarah and Emily? How could you?" I sat back, a mix of guilt and satisfaction washing over me. I knew it was a bit mean. A part of me hoped that this would finally put an end to the constant stream of messages. For the next few days, my phone was relatively quiet. I thought maybe, just maybe, I'd finally solved the problem. But then a week later, I got a text message from an unknown number. "Hey, is this Jake's number?" I sighed, my fingers hovering over the keyboard. Should I tell the truth? Should I play along? In the end, I decided honesty was probably the best policy. "No, this isn't Jake's number. This is a new number that used to belong to Jake apparently. And please spread the word that Jake has a new number now." "Oh, I'm so sorry. I'll let people know. Thanks for being honest." I breathed a sigh of relief, and finally, someone who listened. But my relief was short-lived. The next day, I got another text. "Jake, my man, party in my place this weekend, you in?" I groaned, burying my face in my hands. It seemed like this nightmare was far from over. Over the next few weeks, I tried everything to stop the flood of messages. I changed my voicemail to clearly state that this was not Jake's number. I replied to every message explaining the situation, and I even considered changing my number, but the thought of going through all that hassle again was too much to bear. One day I got a call from Jake's mom. I decided to answer, hoping I could finally put an end to this madness. "Jake, honey, why haven't you been answering my calls?" "I'm sorry, ma'am, but this isn't Jake. This is a new number that used to belong to Jake." "Oh my goodness, I'm so sorry. I had no idea Jake had changed his number. He never tells me anything these days." "It's okay. I've been trying to let people know, but it's been challenging." "I can only imagine. I'm so sorry for the trouble. I'll make sure to spread the word." "Thank you. I really appreciate that." "Of course. And again, I'm so sorry for the inconvenience." After that call, things started to calm down a bit. A flood of messages slowed to a trickle, and then to just an occasional drip. Every now and then I'd still get a text meant for Jake, but it was manageable. Looking back, I can laugh about it now. But at the time, it felt like I was living in some kind of twisted teenage soap opera. All because of a phone number that used to belong to a high school hockey player who has a knack for charming the ladies.